Does this seem like justice to you? Does this seem fair to you? The 9 staffers from Stephen Colbert's show who were arrested for being unaccompanied in the Capitol. This happened on June 16th. The charges have been dropped against them. They were originally charged with obstructing an official proceeding because they were in the Capitol building and they weren't supposed to be there. They got kicked out once and then they returned. They were harassing the offices, at least. I guess the Republican lawmakers who they were attempting to harass weren't actually in their offices, but they banged on the windows of Lauren Boebert's office and Kevin McCarthy's office and Jim Jordan's office, and they were arrested and the charges were dropped. And this is the justification. This is so bananas to me, because this is the justification from the U.S. attorney in the District of Columbia for why he's dropping the charges instead of prosecuting this. This is what he said. He said, after a comprehensive review of all the evidence and the relevant legal authority, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia has determined that it cannot move forward with misdemeanor charges of unlawful entry against the 9 individuals who were arrested on June 16th of 2022 at the Longworth office building. The individuals who entered the building on 2 separate occasions were invited by congressional staffers to enter the building in each instance and were never asked to leave by the staffers who invited them, though members of the group had been told at various points by the U.S. Capitol Police that they were supposed to have an escort. The office would be required to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that these invited guests were guilty of the crime of unlawful entry because their escort chose to leave them unattended. We do not believe that it is probable that the office would be able to obtain and sustain convictions on these charges. The defendants no longer will be required to appear for a scheduled hearing in the Superior Court of the District of Columbia on July 20th, 2022. Okay, so even though this reminds me actually of what James Comey did to Hillary Clinton in 2016, where he wrote this indictment of Hillary Clinton, how she mishandled classified information, how she deliberately set up her own email server in a closet in her home, knowing that this was not only dangerous and a threat to national security, but against the law. He wrote this damning indictment of her. And then at the end, he goes, but we're not going to prosecute because, well, you know, it might be kind of difficult and we don't want to, and it might look political. And it was just the most mind-blowing conclusion to an indictment. It was like saying, look at the puzzle that I've built. 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 equals, and you sit there expecting it to be 5 because it's very obvious. And then they go, 10 because we choose it for it to be 10. This is the same exact thing. They were in the Capitol on 2 separate occasions on the same day, unaccompanied. They were aware that they were supposed to have an escort and they didn't. And that should be enough to prosecute them. And they should be prosecuted because that is what happened to conservatives who did the exact same thing. Here's the thing. Stephen Colbert is a liberal. Stephen Colbert is not some neutral television personality with no political agenda, no political leanings, and who engages in no political activism. The 9 staffers for Stephen Colbert are not simply random neutral actors with no ulterior motives. They are leftists. They have a political agenda, and their political agenda, of course, matches the political agenda of the Biden administration. Their political agenda is a leftist agenda, and that is why the U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia is not prosecuting them, because they are liberal. This is a double standard, but it's worse than a double standard. It shows us that what we are facing right now in the United States is actually a system where there are 2 tiers of justice. And I suppose I should even put justice in quotation marks here, because if you are conservative, then you can be thrown in prison for over a year before you even stand trial for entering a so-called restricted area, even if your crime was nonviolent. But if you're liberal and you do literally the exact same thing, if you enter a restricted area without an escort, knowing that you're supposed to have an escort, you're just let off scot-free. This is banana republic type of stuff. This is not an isolated incident. This is a really big deal. If you compare the January 6th defendants, the nonviolent January 6th defendants, let's be specific, to Stephen Colbert's 9, what's the difference between how these cases are being treated under the law? There is one difference. The difference is politics. The difference is that the January 6th defendants were Trump supporters who were against Joe Biden, who had concerns about election integrity, and Stephen Colbert's 9 were in these congressional office buildings to harass Republican lawmakers, to attend the January 6th committee on behalf of the leftist that they work for, Stephen Colbert. And because of that, they were let off scot-free. This, my friends, this is an abuse of power. This is beyond a double standard.